Hi guys, welcome! It's time to use the Clear Stamp and Die of the Month Club kit from Spellbinders for March, and this one is called Butterfly Burst, so it's going to be perfect for some springtime cards. Let me show you what this stamp set looks like, and of course you can purchase the stamp club with just the stamps, but I have the coordinating die. Okay, so here it is. You get these beautiful floral butterflies. You get 2 butterflies and then a decorative piece. You get lots of really cute sentiments. They say, "Just a little hi from me. You are so kind. The best is yet to come. And have the best birthday." And then here are the coordinating dies. They cut out everything except for the single blooms. And you can use those smaller stamps to color in the blooms on the butterflies if you want. And I love that it cuts out all of the sentiments. It just makes them look so polished and finished looking. So you get 4 sentiment dies. I'm also going to be using the embossing folder, the 3D embossing folder of the month for March, and it's called Tiled Motif. It's really beautiful, and I'll show you what that looks like here in just a minute. I'm going to be creating 3 cards for you today in this video. So let's start out with card number 1. I have some lightweight vellum and some heavyweight vellum. I wanted to try both with these butterflies. So I'm going to stamp out the 2 butterfly images onto these pieces of vellum. I'm using some VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which is a slow drying ink, perfect for embossing. But before I stamp them out, I'll go ahead and add some anti-static powder just in the places where I'm going to be stamping out the butterflies. This will ensure that my embossing powder doesn't go where I don't want it to be. And now I can ink up the butterflies. So I'm going to be using some clear embossing powder over these butterflies. This will add a glossy look to the butterflies, as well as providing just a little bit of dimension. Let's stamp out the second butterfly onto the heavyweight vellum. I wasn't sure which one I would like better. Now I can pour over the clear embossing powder. I'm just using a piece of type paper to catch it. And then I can funnel it back into the bottle. Let's pour some embossing powder over the heavyweight vellum next. I made sure to heat up my heat gun for a really long time because I don't want to add too much heat to the vellum for fear of making it curl and buckle and just go weird. Okay, so here's the first vellum butterfly on the lightweight, and now for the heavyweight. And then I'm going to use the coordinating die to cut out both of these pieces, and I'll tape them in place. I'll just cut out the vellum so it'll be easier to run through my die cut machine. Okay, so here is my first butterfly, the lightweight vellum. And then this is the heavyweight, and it looks more opaque, of course. And I think I like the lightweight vellum better. It's just more butterfly-like, flittery and thin. I'm going to use my Copic markers to add a little bit of color to the blooms on these butterflies' wings. But of course, you could use the coordinating stamps to do that. Using Copic markers or alcohol markers on your vellum pieces adds just a very faded color. I wish it was a little bit brighter, but that's all right. That's how it works on vellum. And this is a super fast process because there's not a lot to color in on these butterflies. I'm just adding yellow, pink, and purple Copic marker colors on these wings. There are a lot of teeny little blossoms, so it's easy to miss them. I used the butterfly die to cut out a piece of pink and purple cardstock, Then I'm going to glue my butterflies onto these colored cardstocks just by adding a little bit of glue down the center or the body of the butterfly and offsetting them slightly so you can really see the pink cardstock. Here's a close-up look at that. And the purple one. I cut down a piece of black cardstock to slightly smaller than an A2 sized panel. I misted it with my spray bottle and ran it through my Platinum 6 machine. And here it is. Isn't that just gorgeous with the black cardstock and the tiled motif 3D embossing folder? For this card, I'm using the sentiment that says, "You are so kind." And then I'll use the coordinating die, of course, to cut that out. And here it is, ready to be put on the card. I'll give you a close-up look at this, but it cuts out such good detail. There we go, now it's clear. But it goes around each and every letter. I'm going to attach my black panel onto a piece of pink cardstock. This pink is the same pink that I used behind one of the butterflies. And I'm going to attach it at the top right corner. So it's a little offset like my butterflies are. And then the butterflies I'm just going to glue down flat. Because I didn't glue the wings of the butterflies down, it does give the cards a little bit of dimension or lift because the wings are kind of fluffed up. It works better with the lightweight vellum though. And then the sentiment I'll glue down flat right between the butterflies. I'm also going to add a few white gems. These are the opal white gems, just to coordinate a little bit with this stark white sentiment. And now I can attach my pink panel onto a white card base. And here is a close-up look at the finished card. But can you see the shine of the embossed butterflies? It's so pretty. For card number 2, I'm going to stamp out my own pattern paper using the butterflies and some of the bloom stamps. So I'm working on a piece of Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock. And my first image didn't stamp out very well, but that's all right. You're not going to notice because I'm going to have a really busy panel here. I'm making sure to turn my acrylic block so the butterflies are facing all different sides. I will have a lot of scrap pieces because this is just going to be an A2 sized card. But I liked the freedom that this larger piece of cardstock gives me. This way I can select where I want to cut out my panel. Before I stamp the single blooms, I am going to pour over the clear embossing powder just so this doesn't dry. It stays wet for a pretty long time, but I just don't want to take any chances. So I'm just going to pour over the the clear embossing powder next and just have that ready to go. And I didn't add any anti-static powder to this panel, but it's okay because the embossing powder is clear. So if you forget that step, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Now for the smaller blooms. And these I'm just going to stamp out between the butterflies. Adds a little more interest to the pattern. For my 3 cards today, I didn't use these small images to color in the flowers on the butterfly wings, but I'm definitely going to give that a try because it does look like a lot of fun. Once I'm done stamping all of these flowers, I'll again pour over some clear embossing powder. I'll use the same piece of type paper to catch the strays. Embossing it like this will kind of lock in the ink so that it doesn't smear, because I am going to be bringing in some inks to blend over this piece of pattern paper. You could, of course, wait for the ink to dry, but I like locking it in place with embossing it. So let's melt the embossing powder. It just turns nice, bright black and glossy looking. And again, I allowed my heat tool to warm up for a good minute before I bring it to the paper. So this makes for a really fun piece of pattern paper. These butterflies are so airy and pretty. And I never tire of watching the embossing powder melt. I have one more little corner here to melt. And then we are ready to add some ink to this panel. First, I'll use cracked pistachio, and then peacock feathers. And last, I'll use kitsch flamingo. These three colors blend together beautifully, and they make some interesting colors when you overlap them. And now this panel is ready to cut out. I'm using a die cut from Spellbinders, which is exactly 5.5 by 4.25. I do end up, however, cutting this down a little bit, but here's the panel. And now I'm going to add some Copic markers over the flowers in the butterfly wings. I'll use pink over the pink ink, and then a little bit of purple where the two blend together. And now for a little bit of blue alcohol marker. And it's just a very subtle touch, but it looks really pretty once it's all done. And last, I'll bring in a green Copic marker. I decided to round the corners of the top right corner and the bottom left corner, just add a little more interest to the card. And of course, I'll do the same with the card base and the black matting that I'm going to put behind it. I think that looks so pretty that way. So I glued all of these panels together. I stamped out my sentiment onto a black butterfly die cut shape and attached it to another white butterfly just to add a drop shadow behind it. I'll glue this down in the center of the card, add a few sequins around the butterfly, and here's a close-up look at the finished card. The sentiment, "Have a wonderful day," comes from a stamp set that was released in November of 2022, and it's called Sealed Sentiments. It just fit beautifully on that butterfly silhouette. For card number 3, I'm going to use the little bauble, or whatever this little shape is, and I'm stamping it out onto another piece of Express It cardstock. Again, the coloring on this image is really fast because the flowers are really small, but I'm going to color them in with some reds, some blues, and a little bit of yellow for the teeny tiny buttercup flower images. I also stamped out the sentiment that says "Just a little hi from me," and I will be cutting that out with the coordinating die once I have all of my coloring done. And here they are, all cut out. So the sentiment will fit perfectly inside of this little bauble, and I popped it up with a foam strip. So my background panel comes from the stitching die of the month for March. Just to show you where this came from. This was a leftover panel, and I thought it was so cute I had to save it, and I'm going to use it on this card. I'm using a little bit of red ink in the center, and then this panel is going to be glued down flat. This white panel here is actually the card base. The card base is all ready to go. And then I'm going to pop up the bauble with some foam squares and center it on the card. I'll add some sequins around the bauble, and I use some really teeny tiny gemstones inside the red flowers and the blue flowers. I used black and yellow gemstones for that. So very simple card. but it was really fun to create. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Clear Stamp and Die of the Month Club kit for March of 2023. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I'll have the links below as usual. Have a wonderful day. Bye.